This is one of the most heinous stories I have ever covered. It is about a woman who unalived 5 men she married after she had secured her rights to their properties. Her MO is targeting rich men, then manipulating them to fall in love with her and getting them to marry her. After she has cemented her place in the lives of these men and their properties, she then unalives them without a trace or anything blowing back on her. It looks like after her first unaliving, she pretty much got away with unaliving nearly 5 men, 5 times, but unfortunately for her, her 5th husband, who is a university lecturer who goes by the name Peter Mumbai, was her last draw to a close. She would have pretty much gotten away with the demise of Peter Mumbai if not for an intrusive housemaid and a restless first wife. This story will send shivers down your spine. And Mumbai is originally from Zimbabwe, where she got married to her first husband, who eventually was unalive due to natural causes. She eventually sold his assets and moved to Malawi, where she chanced on her second husband, an army brigadier named Manda. Sources say Manda died of AIDS because it was rumored that Manda was an HIV patient. But 1 year after Manda married Anne, his health started deteriorating. He was losing weight and eventually he passed on. Now, Anne was not suspected because Manda was suffering from AIDS, so the doctor felt it was Manda's health issues that struck him down. After Brigadier Manda died, Anne sold his house and bought another house in a different area where she met her third husband, a flight captain by the name Mr. Shangala, who did not last long after marrying Anne. He passed on just 5 months after marrying Anne. All Mr. Shangala's property went to Anne. After Shangala passing, she met another man, an old man who was already at the brink of death, but had so much wealth to his name. And Anne did what she does best by marrying this man. After a year, the man passed on, with Anne inheriting most of this man's property. She was on an escapade, which it seems that no one will be stopping her until she met her 5th and final husband, who ruined her killing streak. Mr. Peter Mumbai was a professor at the Lilongwe University of Agriculture in Malawi and was on the road to processing his retirement benefit, which was said to be 100 million Malawian kwacha. Mr. Peter met Anne and he immediately got married to Anne, and they lived together for close to 7 years. It may seem that this is the longest marriage Anne has ever been in, which is mind-boggling because all her previous marriages did not last for close to a year. Could it be that Anne has finally found real love? Or perhaps it could be that Mr. Peter took a very long time to process their 100 million kwacha retirement benefit. Anne was waiting for that time to be due before she could strike again. In April 2022, Mr. Peter was hit with a strange sickness after having dinner one night. He began to roll in bed. It was said that Anne tried to call the husband's brother to let him know that something was terribly wrong with his brother Peter. Eventually, Anne, with the assistance of their maid, was able to carry Mr. Peter to their car, where Anne alone drove Peter to the hospital, which was distant from their home. When they got to the first hospital, they were referred to another hospital, sometimes due to the lack of hospital beds or the severity of Mr. Peter's situation. Upon arriving at the other hospital, unfortunately for Mr. Peter, he had already passed on. The doctors then declared that Anne performed an autopsy on Mr. Peter because they would want to know what actually killed Mr. Peter. And at this moment, things was beginning to crush down on Anne. She became real suspicious. It was said that she turned deaf ears to the doctor's request and decided to bury Mr. Peter at his hometown. It was said that she rushed the burial process because she did not want anybody to suspect the death of Mr. Peter. After the funeral, she rushed back to Lilongwe, which is not right because in their tradition, she needed to stay 3 days to perform some traditional rites and stuff. When Anne got back home to her husband's house, she instantly fired the housemaid. So this decision that Anne took to fire the housemaid was when everything started unfolding. The housemaid started singing like a bird. She was voicing out her thoughts and suspicion. She started telling people and family members of Mr. Peter that Anne was the one who killed her master by food poisoning. Now here is the twist. Mr. Peter was already married to his first wife, who stays in the UK. But it is unclear if Mr. Peter was divorced or separated with this first wife. So when this first wife got a wind of Mr. Peter's demise, and the rumors that the housemaid was spreading that Anne was responsible for the death of her master, she then made a few calls to find out what actually killed Mr. Peter. But she then discovered that there was no autopsy done on Mr. Peter. She then requested that Mr. Peter's body should be exhumed for an autopsy to be conducted on the already buried body. After this autopsy was performed on Mr. Peter, everything took a drastic turn for Anne. When the autopsy came out, it was determined that Mr. Peter died of food poisoning, although they could not discover the kind of poison which unalived Mr. Peter. Mr. Peter's lungs and his intestine had a long continuous history of him taking certain poisonous food, which may suggest that Anne has been poisoning his husband, Mr. Peter, for a long while, and perhaps she administered her last dose of poison on Mr. Peter that night before he died. Immediately, Anne was arrested and charged with the gruesome murder of Mr. Peter Mumba, her fifth husband. The jury then confirmed that when Mr. Peter died, there was 2 hospitals on the way close to Mr. Peter's house, but Anne drove all the way to a far place, a far hospital, whilst there were 2 hospitals on the way. And Anne didn't take the housemaid along. After Mr. Peter had died, Anne didn't perform an autopsy on the body. And also when Mr. Peter was buried, Anne didn't wait to do the necessary rites. She immediately came back to Mr. Peter's house and fired the maid. So the jury and the judge put 2 and 2 together. With all this evidence levied against Anne, she was found guilty after a long trial of 4 years. In October 2024, she was sentenced to 53 years in prison. After she was seen on TV, other relatives of her past marriage started putting 2 and 2 together. So they now determined that Anne could have been the cause of all her 4 relationships, her 4 marriage to other men. She could have been the one who caused their death. Anne's lawyer is planning to appeal for the judge's decision because she is pleading not guilty, and the autopsy didn't actually determine the kind of poison that was used to poison Mr. Peter. Many people think Anne did it. Some also think she did not do it because there is no link of the poisoning used. I'm just wondering, if Anne would have gotten away with the death of Mr. Peter, who could have been her next target? Could it have been that she would have gotten away with this murder if it wasn't the intrusiveness of the maid and also the wife of Mr. Peter, who actually determined that they should have done an autopsy on the body of his late husband? I think Anne would have gotten away with this murder and would have gone on ahead to find another husband, because that is her modus operandi. She targets rich people and seduces them to marry her, then after some time she unalives them to acquire their property. I don't understand why people are so wicked, because I believe that this world, you would never go with anything. Even the house that you build, you leave it and go. You would not even be buried in that house you built with your own sweat. All the money, you leave it and go. But so why do people commit heinous acts just to acquire material wealth on this earth? That is for you to judge on the comment section. Please leave your comments at the section, what you think, if Anne deserves the 53 years or if she should deserve a pardon, because there wasn't link of the poison that was administered to Mr. Peter. Because some school of thought think that Anne didn't murder the husband. The maid was in the house, so the maid could have been the one who had murdered the husband and pinned it on Anne. Who knows? This is Twisted True Crime. See you in my next video. Bye.